How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, Jason.
Great. Thanks for taking some time out and coming on over here. So, how was this transition of coming public via SPAC? This whole process, and now your ticker symbol's changed over. Now you're officially oust. How's that feel?
Well, it certainly, I mean, it feels great. I think our entire team is excited to take kind of the next step for the company. And we have a lot of longtime employees that came on really early and have stuck around, and now they're able to take kind of the next step. And we have the resources to continue to grow the business, which is great. So the whole process has been pretty fantastic.
Excellent. And how big is your team? How many employees do you have?
That's one thing that's interesting about Ouster. We're only 150 employees, so which is relatively small in this industry. Actually, a lot of our peers have 300 plus employees, and it's one of the things I'm proud of. I think with the right combination of strategy and technology, you can accomplish a lot with a little. And we have done that, comparatively, we've accomplished a lot with a little. So 150 will continue to grow. We're going to be growing a lot in the next couple of years.
Excellent. So, for anyone who is unfamiliar with Ouster and yourself, could you give a little introduction to yourself and what Ouster's all about?
Sure. So my background, I'm a engineer by training. I still get deeply involved in the product and engineering side of the business, and that's not going to change really ever. I have been working in LiDAR for the last 8 years now. So this is the second LiDAR startup that I founded. I previously was the co-founder and director of engineering at Quanergy Systems. So I've been working in LiDAR longer than I would say most, and that means that I've also been talking to customers, understanding use cases for a very long time. And I just love the technology. I think it's important across all different industries. It's important it's going to make our lives safer, better, more efficient. And I think that's just kind of it's a compelling technology as a result, and one that I've wanted to dedicate the first part of my career to. Now, Ouster, I kind of bring that context to Ouster, and Ouster distinguishes itself on first being a digital LiDAR company. So the first company that's really trying to pack all of a LiDAR sensor onto a single digital chip versus analog technologies, low levels of integration, which is kind of where the industry has been for a long time. And so that's the first pillar for Ouster, is just significant technology differentiation by integrating a LiDAR sensor onto a silicon CMOS chip, which is what industry after industry has done in Silicon Valley for the last 70 years. It's a really good strategy. But the second point of differentiation is just around our diversification. This really is a strength of Ouster's, is that we're focused on four key industries: the industrial sector, the smart infrastructure sector, robotics, and automotive sectors. And we're able to do that because our digital technology is breaking through. It's really improving both price and performance in a way that allows us to hit the requirements of multiple industries simultaneously with one technology and one set of products. And so the technology is unlocking that diversification. And that's another hallmark of digital technologies, is they usually play across markets. So the same type of digital cameras are sold into automotive, into industrial, into consumer, and into these other industries. So hallmark of digital technologies, it unlocks a diversified strategy. And then the last point of difference around Ouster and what makes us special is just our ability to execute and achieve product market fit and revenue and traction on a condensed time frame. So we started the company in 2015, and it only took us about 3 years to generate our first revenue with customers. And now we have a significant customer base. We have 500 total customers. We did 18.9 million in revenue last year. We're operating with positive gross margins. We had 31% gross margins in Q4 2020, and we've outsourced our manufacturing. And that execution side of the business is something, that's the last pillar that I really pride myself on, and I pride our team on, is our ability to execute towards this diversified digital vision. So that sets us up just with the fundamentals to grow to the future.
Excellent. Yeah, I sort of did a deep dive more recently into all of the different players in the space, and also came essentially to the same conclusion. And it's kind of odd, and it could be just market timing or whatever, but it's odd to see right now, the different players, and it seems like you guys are getting coming a little bit under the radar, which maybe not be a bad thing once you as you progress along. So, but it was odd to see, sort of the share price movement so far.
Yeah, I think we've historically always focused on building the business, right? And that's come first before anything, because I think that's what's needed. Right, what's needed is to build a real business with sound fundamentals, positive gross margins, significant customers, diversified, revenue base, and we focused on that historically. And I don't have control over the share price, but I do now have significant control around our company's ability to execute, and control around educating the market. And that's something that we haven't done in the past. And I'm spending, I want to make sure that people understand what Ouster is all about. And that's why I'm thrilled to be on your show. But spending a lot of time with the investment community, just making sure that people understand that, yeah, Ouster may have been flying under the radar before, but it's because we were executing on the business.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, definitely. And I guess I also should caveat and say that I have a disclaimer down in the video description. I am an investor in your company as well, and most certainly excited to follow along and to see the progress, and plan on regardless of the day-to-day share price movements. I'm definitely planning to be a long-term investor in the company. So, and it seems like once I began to follow your company and progress, it was like, as you were signing on new customers or contracts or partnerships seemingly weekly. Is this a trend that we can possibly continue to see?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we've announced multiple specifically named customers in the last month that are significant customers, like Outrider, Casbor, Plus, some of the biggest LiDAR deals ever for high resolution LiDAR we've announced in the last month. We also announced 20 strategic customer agreements signed in the last 9 months, half of which we signed in 2021 alone. So you absolutely can expect a constant stream of new customers. We're just in a very different position in this industry than a lot of our peers. We have mature products. We have competitive products. They offer kind of the best in class combination of affordability and performance. And so 2021 is definitely going to be a breakout year for us.
That's good to hear. That's really good to hear. So just talking specifics about your customers, and like when you go through the process, and I know it varies from customer to customer and agreement to agreement, but what type of time frame is it when you sign on a customer and you agree to so many sensors or product? What does the time frame look like from getting that customer onboarded and getting products out to that customer?
Sure. Yeah. And so the first thing to understand, it depends on the customer and the vertical, right? We've identified over 14,000 potential customers across our 4 verticals. And the reality is that they all they kind of behave differently depending on who you're talking to. So I think a lot of people understand the automotive customer base. There's a long design and cycle necessary to get a customer into production, measured in years. And that's because it's high volume, safety critical technology and so it's difficult to bring to market. And the economics have to be right. But in our customer base, there are lots of customers that are able to come to market in a matter of months instead of a matter of years. There are good examples in smart infrastructure where maybe the LiDAR is used instead of as a safety critical sensor, as a analytical sensor or a monitoring sensor. It's trying to estimate, and count vehicles and estimate their velocities just so that you can signal traffic lights. That the development period for that is far less risky because it's not safety critical. It's not trying to save a person's life or prevent an accident. So there we have, it can be a matter of months for us to move through evaluation and pre-production period and actually start deploying significant numbers of sensors. And then maybe in industrials, we actually have a large number of customers that behave more like the automotive customers, where they're OEMs building heavy machinery. Maybe it's a dump truck or a piece of mining machinery. And their production cycles and development cycles kind of look like automotive. They're going to take a year, sometimes more, to bring to commercialize our sensors and the associated kind of autonomy technology into their platform, and then sell it on a long duration production run. Where actually in industrials, we might get a 5, 10, even 15-year long production run locked in with our sensors. So it really depends on the use case as a result, but there are some nice buckets. If they're non-safety critical applications, they generally can come to market faster. But of course there are benefits to stickiness around time to market. You get generally stickier customers from that perspective. So that gives you some perspective. I think in terms of the contracts and what kinds of contracts we're signing, they also run the gamut. We're really focused on building more visibility into our revenue stream through putting our customers under strategic customer agreement contracts. And that's what we announced 2 weeks ago is 20 SCAs, we call them, strategic customer agreements. And there, we just want to be hyper credible with those contracts. So actually in the press release, we listed out the criteria of what we define as an SCA as. And that's the minimum requirement. And it's things like specific Ouster products must be purchased for this agreement. A specific customer project must be defined in the contract. Specific pricing, volume, demand forecast that is at minimum 3 years, non-binding in duration, and then things like warranty and terms of sale. So all of that must be part of the criteria for us to call it a strategic customer agreement. And that's kind of just, so that's one of the main initiatives that we're doing to contract our customers and get repeatable revenue or more visible revenue, I would say. Yeah.
Right. And that kind of came out in your investor day. It kind of like, it almost seemed like there was a bit of frustration in your voice over some of the competition, how they're presenting, customers and things of that nature. Did you want to talk about some of the competition? Like, how do you differentiate yourself other than even this part of talking about the amount of customers that you have?
Yeah, I mean, well, certainly. So it's not just the amount of customers. Right? There are some other competitors that have. I mean, there are a couple competitors that have lots of customers, and so, but that's certainly. I mean, there's very few of them, but there are a couple. But we are trying to distinguish on kind of the conservatism and clarity of the numbers that we're providing to the market, and so that goes back to things like literally in our press releases around SCAs, clearly defining what we even mean by a strategic customer agreement. That's important to me that the market understands what we're signing and it's not being misinterpreted. And that extends to kind of all of our financial reporting, all of our forecasting. I've talked about it a lot in the analyst day. So credibility in numbers, I think, is key, because if we focus on credibility of numbers and then we start hitting our numbers, people are going to give us increasing credit for our forecasting versus our peers. That's a core kind of strategy of ours, and it just makes sense to me. I'm an engineer. I want to provide information that is highly accurate and conservative. That's the engineer in me. But I think that resonates with most people, frankly. I think that another place where, I mean, there are a number of places where we're distinguished from our competitors. One thing that I would highlight is on the automotive side. we have a significantly different strategy than our competitors. And it's around providing complete LiDAR packages versus a single forward-looking LiDAR. And I did talk about this at Analyst Day and at the Investor Analyst Day, but I think I didn't do a good enough job explaining what's so much better about having 360-degree LiDAR coverage versus a single forward-looking LiDAR. And so again, what we're proposing and what we're able to build is a suite of 5 solid-state LiDAR sensors that go all around the vehicle, just like the 8 or 12 CMOS cameras that go around the vehicle on today's ADAS systems. And we're proposing selling that suite of 5 sensors for $1,000. We can do that. And our competitors are talking about building a single forward-looking LiDAR for $1,000. Now, with a forward-looking LiDAR, the problem is everybody wants to be able to not pay attention in their car and have the car drive itself, like be able to scribble notes on your way to work in the morning, on your morning commute. And a forward-looking LiDAR really doesn't enable that kind of hands-free, eyes-free driving that we all want. It will allow you to maintain a lane, hands-free, eyes-free, but you can't even change lanes to go around a slower moving car without side view LiDAR and rear-facing LiDAR to know that there's not someone in your blind spot when you're changing lanes, hands-free, eyes-free. Similarly, you can't even move through a traffic light or a stop sign, an intersection, with a single forward-looking LiDAR, unless you're in the loop. The car's going to have to ask you, can I go forward? Because the LiDAR literally can't see to the left and right. And so it's only with complete 360-degree coverage and redundancy of the LiDAR with all the where all the cameras are looking that you actually get the L3 hands-free, eyes-free safety capability that everybody wants. And we're not saying there's actually any trade-off to that future. We're going to be able to supply that for the same cost as what our competitors are talking about supplying a single LiDAR. We're able to do 5 digital LiDARs, to bring about the feature set that people actually want. So I think that's a really big difference. It's not something that I think that the larger investor community is fully aware of. And you don't just have to take my word for it. If you look at any public materials around kind of this L3 hands-free, eyes-free ADAS systems from automakers, they all show multiple LiDAR sensors on the vehicle. They're not asking for just a forward-looking LiDAR. They're asking for a suite. And so we've listened to the customer, and that's what we're building.
Yeah, I know Lucid Motors recently, kind of unveiling their specs, and they got 12 sensors on their vehicle.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. Sensor redundancy and lots of sensors is the name of the game.
Exactly. So just maybe something on a lighter note. What's the kind of the strangest or oddest request that's come from a customer about how to use your sensors on something kind of just random?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we have this tail of customers that they're not going to drive a lot of volume, but there's some really interesting applications. We deal with them through distributors, through an SMB kind of sales team, and we have some pretty interesting requests. One of them was we have a lot of interesting digital art. So interactive digital art. The idea is like you walk into a room and our sensors are tracking your movement, and then there's projectors that are reacting, projecting information all around you that's reacting to your movements. That kind of interactive digital art is really interesting. There's some great examples of that that we come across on a routine basis. I've seen some. There's a whole host of interesting maritime requests. So you think of LiDAR as going on cars, but we get requests all the time for like, can we put this on a huge million-ton ship and help it auto dock, help it actually come into port and dock. And that's just an awesome application. It's like the key sensor that is going to be used in those auto docking systems is actually our LiDAR sensors. And and you just don't think of LiDAR sensors powering such a huge machine like that. But so those are two examples. I mean, it really runs the gamut. We have some great smart agriculture, smart ag examples where we're doing a combination of plant analytics and robotics. So it's like a tractor that can both navigate the rows of a field and do analytics on the plants, like measure how tall they are, what their leaf structure is, while also providing all the autonomy and efficiency for their actual, the robotic platform. So it runs the gamut, but lots of cool examples.
That's cool. Was it you guys? I know I saw a unmanned a small marine craft boat that was using a lidar sensor. Was that you guys? One
Yeah,
of your
that was
videos?
us. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a company out of Europe that's doing. That was. I mean, it's a great example of how rugged our sensors are. We have the best-in-class rugged ingress spec. So IP69K means you can dunk the thing in water and leave it there a meter underwater indefinitely. You can power wash the thing all you want, and we also are resistant to salt water, salt spray. So that application, they were doing autonomous harbor sonar measurements. So that was a semi-submersible vehicle that was doing automated routes in a harbor to map the seafloor with a sonar, but they need to make sure that they're not going to disrupt harbor operations. So they need to know what's going on the surface and not run into shipping lanes and small vehicles in the water. So, and our LiDAR sensor was the thing preventing that. It was the anti-collision system for the surface. Yeah.
That's pretty neat. That's pretty
Yep,
neat.
yep.
I think you talked about it in the analyst day, but just to bring it back up, has the microchip shortage had any effect on you guys at all? Like you said, that it really hasn't, but I just wanted to cover it again.
Yeah, it really hasn't, and the reason is that we build custom chips on standard processes, and so those custom chips, we have full control over when we purchase them and the volume we purchase them. No one is competing with us to buy our chips, right? And so it's completely proprietary supply chain as a result. So we're able to hold safety stock of the wafers. That's one of the real benefits of silicon technology is you can buy wafers that have literally hundreds or thousands of these chips on them and just store them. They're effectively glass. They have infinite shelf life, and we store 6 to 12 months of safety stock on those critical components.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know. That's
Yeah.
really good. Let's see if you
don't. As a follow-on point there, I mean, we actually have to deal with this because we have significant customer base to ship to. This isn't even an issue for our competitors. A lot of them are not really shipping much product at all. Maybe they're shipping some prototypes. It's a very different environment to transition to this kind of operationalized environment. We have full-time staff monitoring supply chain on the operation side of the business, making sure that we have continuity of supply across every single piece part in the system, let alone critical chips that we develop in-house.
Gotcha. Okay. That's good to know. So if you don't mind, maybe we could discuss a little bit of your intellectual property. I know basically you said you guys are, if not the originator or creator of digital LiDAR, you were one of the early, and you got some patents and intellectual property surrounding that. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, we really invented the whole digital LiDAR space. We're the first company to ever use VCSELs and SPADs in a commercialized LiDAR system. The second being the LiDAR in the iPhone, and that's the only other example I know that's commercialized at this point. So yeah, we were the first to file in this space for the digital LiDAR patents. And there's an interesting report that just came out a couple days ago, and I'm forgetting the link, but I think you could probably search Ouster Lidar patent portfolio. But it showed that we are a complete outlier across all LiDAR competitors in this analysis. And this was some third-party analysis. I had no knowledge of it before it came out. But we're a complete outlier in terms of our quality of patent. And they were measuring quality by the broadness of claims. And that's when you're first to file, you get to file the broad claims. And I think this is a kind of just a great proof point from an independent firm, just showing, I've spent an immense amount of my personal time from the founding of the company, as has my co-founder Mark, on our IP portfolio. We knew we were the first to file. We filed really broadly, filed up and down the technology stack. And patents may sound boring at first blush if you're not used to the IP world, but once you start understanding the strategy behind it, it's like any other puzzle. It can be really, it's drawing the X's and O's and understanding how to position that portfolio to make the best use of it long term.
Yeah, no doubt. I used to work for a large S&P 500 company, and like literally, and as a software developer, and literally, if you created something, they wanted to patent it. So if you don't mind, can you talk about a couple specific customers, like just to kind of give a real world use case of something like the smart city, industrial, and robotic? Everyone always talks about automotive. I'd love to hear some real world use cases. I think you've touched on some of them, but just to maybe highlight a couple of the smart city, industrial, and robotic customers.
Sure. So we just signed an industrial customer and announced, and that's Outrider. And Outrider is a venture-backed company. They're kind of a mid-sized company with significant funding that is automating. They're automating yard logistics. So basically, once you get an 18-wheeler pulls in and drops off a container, and you have to unload that, you have to move it around a yard, get it into the warehouse, and that's a whole set of activity that's in a constrained environment, but it's highly complex. Kind of just a ballet of different vehicles, forklifts, and other vehicles tugging product around a yard, and so we just signed a major deal with them. They're expanding their yard logistics fleet. They have real customers all locked in already, and so that's a really good example where it kind of looks like an autonomous vehicle, but it's in a constrained environment that allows them to avoid some of the technical challenges with autonomous vehicles, but it has its own challenges around some of the complex tasks that they're doing, close maneuvering and things like that. And our sensors kind of hit on all the requirements that they need to actually automate that application. In robotics, we have a great customer that is Postmates. Formerly Postmates, now it's just Serve Robotics. They just spun out as their own entity, and that's last mile delivery. So they're building these small electric vehicles that mostly move on sidewalks. They go about 3 miles an hour walking speed and deliver packages. And it's true last mile delivery, so food and goods. And we are the exclusive LiDAR provider on that platform. So a single OS1 sensor is on all those vehicles. Really cool. That's an example of where diversification in our customer base really helped us last year. COVID had an impact on some subset of our customers, both negatively and positively. And a customer like Serve that's doing last mile delivery had a positive impact on the business, obviously, just given hands-free delivery was a major. Well, it's just increased in interest for obvious reasons. And then on smart infrastructure, we recently, or at the beginning of the year, we announced with Lux Modus, which is a little bit different than. So Lux is doing pipeline analysis in Canada. So the Canadian company doing kind of surveying and analysis and assessment of pipeline infrastructure. And so they're actually doing that on a mobile platform. They're flying drones and driving all-terrain vehicles along pipelines and assessing, the status of a pipeline. But we also have customers that are, I think we announced a project that we're doing with the city of Chattanooga as well, that's fixed infrastructure, and for traffic infrastructure, where we're deploying sensors onto traffic poles. And the sensors are estimating the velocity and number of cars waiting at stoplights and using that to determine how to signal lights. And it turns out that it's less expensive. It can be more economical, and you get better performance by using LiDAR sensors in that scenario than traditional cameras or radar sensors, which are sometimes used, or in-ground inductive sensors or other kind of presence sensors. it can be cheaper because you're not digging up the road or using fewer cameras, or you're just getting better performance because LiDAR can give you such a great estimate of the reality, the real 3D environment, regardless of day, night, and weather conditions. So that's a number of non-automotive use cases that we've announced in the since the beginning of the year.
Very cool. Yeah, I've seen a couple of those. I have seen a couple of videos on the Postmates or that little robot. So it's pretty neat. I guess probably my final question here, wrapping it up, is you guys have a aggressive revenue growth plan, looking out several years here in your investor presentation. So what does it take to accomplish those goals and hit those metrics going out already over the course of 3 or 4 years?
I think, first and foremost, it takes the same focus that it took to get us to this point and to continue into the future. So focusing on the fundamentals of the business, listening to customers, building products that customers actually want and will use today is incredibly important. Focusing on manufacturing and gross margins and costs is incredibly important. We're already well down that path. And then focusing on the sales cycle and contracting our customers, building products that they want to align their business with long term, and expanding, and just expanding the sales team in general is a major initiative that we're undergoing right now. Like I said, we've been on a pound for pound basis. We have many fewer employees than a lot of our peers and have more revenue than most of them, and far more customers than most of them. And so now with this new money, we have the ability to close that gap on heads, and we're certainly more efficient on a headcount basis. So adding more heads is going to really just expand the business. We have 14,000 potential customers to go out and win, and this new funding allows us to do that.
That's exciting. I'm excited to follow along for sure. Well, Angus, I think that's we're at 35 minutes, so I think I got all my questions in. Is there anything you wanted to say as we close it out here?
Well, no, I this is fun. This is the first of this kind the interview of this kind that I've done, and I enjoyed being on it. So thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely appreciate you coming over here and speaking to the retail end of the investors. So really, like I said, really excited to see where you all go, and excited to follow along.
Sure thing. My pleasure.
Okay. Thanks for coming on.
Have a good one.
All right.